So this is the process I use to displace my artwork after I'm done in the first stage in Procreate. So I've done a quick little sketch of like a cowboy guy um, falling over or something, not really sure. Just a bit of a doodle. So basically, displacement is, I think it's a term from like 3D software originally, although if you're familiar with Photoshop or a lot of other photo editors will do it too. It takes a texture as a separate image and will distort based on the lights and the darks in the image. So the texture in this case is a composite of my paper texture, and I've made some edits to it. So on the right hand side is sort of a composite. So when I say composite, I mean just basically more than one layer showing at a time and then flattened. The right hand side is how it normally appears, and then the left hand side is my actual displacement texture. So what I've done is taken the fibers. I want those to be raised, so lights are raised and darks recede. So I've made adjustments to both textures independently, and then saved a composite, which you can see on the left. And that I've just saved on iCloud Drive, so I can load it easily. So let's go back to wrong one. Let's go back to our image here and go through the process. So the first thing you want to do is hide the line work and texture wash layers and the background color. So you'll be left with just your paint base. And you want to then share that as a PNG. So if we do that, and I'm doing PNG because that's lossless. I don't want it to lose any quality during this process. So I'll open that in Affinity Photo. Right, this is one of the really annoying things with Affinity is if you've got a document open, you get this horrible dialogue. So basically, press OK and go to the sort of home screen and do that again. So share that, PNG, open in Affinity, and there we have it. And Affinity has these things called personas, which you can see along the top. So I think we're in like what's called the default one. You've got the select one up here. I can't remember what they're all called. We're only concerned with the first two at the minute. So in the default persona, you want to go to the filters, which is that one there, and we want to displace. Displace is under distortions, so you can sort of just hide a bunch of them and only look at the distorting ones. Displace, they're in alphabetical order. And down here, the strength, we'll leave it 10 pixels. That's pretty good for what we want to do at this stage. We're not concerned with beneath. Load is what we want to click first and grab a copy of our displacement texture. And you'll see that that's wrapped it around the texture. Even though you can't see the texture, it's shifted all the pixels. So anything light is sort of moving one direction, and anything dark, and when I say dark and light, I mean in the texture, not in the paint itself, is moving the other direction. Click the tick to accept that. So we've applied the filter. Then we want to go to the little ellipsis menu, I think, and X. No, it's the other one. Oh, they both got ellipses on. Export PNG is the format we want, and then in the lower left corner, tap Share, and you want Copy. If you don't have Copy there, you need to scroll all the way to the right, tap the More, No, copy. Don't have a choice. That must be an iOS default. Okay, so hit copy. It's now on our clipboard. Cancel that. If we switch back to Procreate, and we just want to paste from the clipboard, and it will just put a copy right on top of our other layer. We could rename that if we want. I'm not going to bother. Hide the other one, and then we want to switch back to Affinity, and go to your layers. I can't remember what the things on the right are called. The might be personas as well, or environment or something. Affinity has a weird way of naming, like a weird naming convention. So apologies if I got it wrong. But we want a new fill layer, and that will create the color we've got set, which is looks like it's pretty much white, which is fine. And we want to place that below our artwork. And then we want to go to the ellipsis menu, the one on the right, go to merge and merge visible, and that's created a copy of all the visible pixels and set it to its own layer. It's slightly different than in, say, like Photoshop on a Mac or a PC, where if you merge you lose all your layers. It looks like because I had the second one selected, let's put that down below, but we'll put it on top for now. And then we want to run another filter. So go back to your filters, and you don't want distortion, so select all filters, and it's detect edges we want. So if you imagine for a second, I'll zoom out, that's sort of where all the edges of your strokes have pooled the pigment. Well, obviously we don't want it looking like light painting, so we're gonna make an adjustment, which is this one here, change it to black and white. We don't really need to concern ourselves with the different colors there. What that basically does is it's as if you've got black and white film and you're filtering out certain light. So it's how you're applying or converting to black and white, but we don't really care. The defaults are fine. This little button by the trash can will merge an adjustment. So you'll see I've got the adjustment layer there, which I don't really need it as a separate layer. I want to merge it, and you'll see that it's now just applied it to that whole layer. We would now need to invert, so that's another adjustment. So back to adjustments and find invert, and that's looking a bit better. Now again we merge, and you'll see we've got just this unnamed layer here, which we want to take back into Procreate now. So export, PNGs format, share, copy, back in Procreate, paste, and then set this to color burn. And you see it's sort of just darkened all the edges. We need to sort of see how it's globally affected, so we need to turn our layers all back on. Not that one though. So it's looking quite dark, but I'm going to adjust that later. What we actually want to adjust just now is how much effect this sort of edge on these strokes we want. So what we're going to do is, with the edge layer selected, we're going to just apply some blur till we are happy with how much we have, and it would probably be a good idea to zoom out and see our overall image first. So you see, if you run it right up, it's almost as if the paint's kind of drying, which is quite cool. But let's see, normally just a little bit is fine. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'll do. Click off, and now we want to displace the line work as well. So hide everything except our line work, and I don't think it matters whether the background color is on or not, but I'm gonna hide it anyways. Export, sorry, share, export as PNG. I think we'll get a horrible dialog box again. Not even. But it certainly didn't import. But if we go back there, back in Procreate, do that again, open that in Affinity, and run our displacement filter again. Not sure why it's not generated the previews, but in this case, 10 pixels is probably going to be too much. Oops, yeah, we've got to load that texture. I would probably do 5 pixels. Accept that, and let's just export and paste that back into Procreate. Paste that on top, and we can hide the other one. And when we show all our layers, we have got something looking a bit more watercolor-like now. You can, at this point, either say you're done, or you can make some adjustments, sort of color correction. If we lighten this main copy of the paint base layer, we can sort of bring out different. That looks horrible. Let's make it a bit more brown, so you can lighten the whole thing, go to town, and once you're happy with it, you're done basically. So I would probably, looking back on it, would probably reduce the amount of displacement I've done on the paint base layer, probably to around, I don't know, 7 or 8 pixels, because it's a little bit heavy. Oops. The other thing you can do, so we've basically, the detect edges is kind of the important step for getting what shapes you want to affect in the artwork with dark edges. So you could, in Affinity, you could select, so we've just done globally detected all the edges. You could do something like select the tonal range and then create a fill layer, and then apply a layer style to it. And I've saved, so if we do that quickly, you'll see what I mean. Right, let's go back here to, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so if we go to our select persona we're in, select the tonal range, if we select just the shadows, and then create a fill layer, it will just make a fill layer with that pixel selection. So that's set to the color got right there. If we hide everything but the fill there and deselect, and then go back into select transparency range and then put select transparent, and that's basically selected the opposite of our pixels. So if we invert the selection, we now have a 100% opaque copy of our fill layer. Because the shadows are varying, the fill layer here is somewhat transparent. You'll see what I mean in a sec if I create a new fill layer, and you'll see it's a lot dark, well, lighter. But if I change the color, you'll see. So that versus that, we want to just affect the edges rather than sort of all the in-between in this case. So if we then go, I don't care about that one anymore, we can deselect. So on this layer, I can apply a style that I've saved called Watercolour Edge, and that's just sort of added a, well, it's added a outline. If I go to that, you can't unfortunately share these as sort of files, so you'd have to literally copy down the settings I've got. The main thing is like the radius, alignment, and contour style, and then this gradient I've set. This just is what I'm happy with. I'll leave that up there so you can sort of see how I've built the gradient. If you zoom in, you can see how it's applied that gradient. So what we want to do now is export that as a PNG, copy it, and if we go back into Procreate and paste it. Now what's going on? Well, the reason it's done that is because it's normal, so we want to set that to color burn, and that looks kind of weird, so what we'd want to do is just blur that until we're happy with it. And you can see that's only affected sort of the shadow areas, so you can sort of build up these quite realistic effects with different, you know, if you break apart your image, if you think of it how the actual watercolor is in real life and apply that to how your paint-based layer is built up, you could break it up in various interesting ways and bring it back into Procreate and change stuff like, you know, how much you're blurring it, the opacity, your color burn layer is set to, etc., etc. So you can see the end result is quite a bit more realistic than the original. And that is kind of it. So I'll get this posted and let me know in the forum on the post if there's anything else you want to know. Cheers, bye.